gonna get, okay, so this will get us teed up. Okay, you ready?
You ready?
I'm gonna try not to squeal the whole time. This is Sarah Levitt with the Making Magnificence Project. And today I was just saying that I'm hoping I don't squeal with delight the entire time. Today, my guest is Pamela Nauda Clark, who is a coach and therapist living and practicing in Vermont, and also one of my very dearest friends in my super, super inner circle. And if you want to know who coaches me a lot of the time, it's this woman. So Pamela Nauda Clark, welcome to the Making Magnificence Project.
Oh, thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm not kidding. Like I'm super excited for this, and I'm really hoping I don't just shriek with delight the entire time. Hope I get in a few questions. So this is just to kind of tee this up for everybody. So this is a little bit of a different kind of episode or interview for the Making Magnificence Project. So typically, the project is about someone's journey, which we're absolutely going to talk about. But in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about your journey, our friendship, and kind of this concept of trust the space that you coined. But let's first so give us a sketch first of what you do. So you're a coach and you are a therapist.
Primarily therapist at this point in
Yes.
private practice and here in Vermont. Yes, I still utilize all my coaching and still have some coaching clients, and will likely branch out to relationship coaching at some point. So yeah, basically, I don't know. I mean, like how much does therapist need to be described?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe.
So, sorry, say again.
Maybe it does.
Maybe it does. Well, I was going to say, actually, it might be interesting for people to hear as part of your journey too. We can kind of weave this in. Actually, before I go there. So you've got a full practice right now. You've got a wait list. But if people wanted to kind of reach out to you, find out more about you, what's the best way to do that?
Probably through my listing on Psychology Today. So Pamela Nauda Clark is on there in Vermont. They can just go to psychologytoday.com and under find therapist, type in that name, and there's my listing. Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm actually going to go at this because there are two tracks here. One is your journey of kind of becoming a coach and then going on to become a therapist. And then there's the distinction to what you were saying a second ago about how much does this need to be described, the distinction between coaching and therapy. And so maybe let's start with your journey, because what I know of you is that this was a lifelong dream. Would that be accurate, Pam?
Yeah, it's kind of always been out there for sure. It's been a twisty path, I would say. And also, like, because my whole life has been a twisty path, I don't see this as like the final destination, because I don't think like that way. And so this is where I am on my path.
I love that. Yeah.
So yeah, I've always been interested in people and dynamics and what makes people work and what happens between people and all of that. Like that's always been my primary interest. I think it drove my father crazy, like through my schooling years, that I was more interested in relationships than I was in academics. And yeah, so that's always been an interest. And I started out my career as a teacher, fifth grade teacher, actually, and moved through that to interior decorating and had my own business called Potential Interiors for a while, and then coaching, and now therapy. And in between there, I also studied yoga. And
you've been a lifelong practitioner of yoga.
Practitioner, and yeah, so, and teacher, and so,
Mm-hmm.
but I see like a very common thread in all of those, like really meeting people where, like, trying to like figure out where people are, where I am, meeting people there,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
kind of looking for not only, and I'm thinking that like in terms of like the relation to interior decorating, because the business was use what you have. So an assistant
Mm.
room and take everything out and look at it all and like rebuild it. And so the theme that fits with that and the other pieces to me is like really looking at what is being showcased and why, what has
Mm.
been kind of discarded, forgotten, buried, cast aside, and why, and like looking at it all and finding the common themes and how it connects, and rebuilding it in a way that, like kind of integrates all of it to find the beauty and the light and the dark of somebody's things or their interior spaces and external or interior spaces. So, but I feel like that's part of teaching, really, like really finding both of those, like what keeps people stuck, what
Mm.
are their strengths, what are their, so it feels like it's a common thread in all of this.
It's a beautiful description. Like, and only you could make that kind of parallel between like interior decorating and kind of
Well,
the
it just feels
interior
like really
exploration.
similar, because I think that our
Yeah, it's
exteriors
beautiful.
really mirror our interiors
Yeah, for sure.
consistently,
Yeah, yeah.
not just with what we kind of collect or accumulate, but also with the how we live in our spaces or
Mm-hmm.
work in our spaces, and
Mm-hmm.
um, can kind of take a peek into somebody's mind and psyche by looking at their
Yeah,
space.
yeah. How it's organized. So you and I want to kind of talk about our origin story and the friendship, which is now more than a decade.
Mhm.
Pam Clark, more than a
I
decade. But sticking with you for a bit. Um, so you go into, so there was this kind of, I'm hearing from kind of a young age, this interest in understanding the pieces of relationship, people, how they fit together. Is that, do I have that?
To some degree, I think it began and still is like first and foremost wanting to understand myself. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got so like, so as a middle schooler, do you remember those teen magazines that had like all those quizzes that told you
Mm-hmm.
at the end, like you had this reveal of
Yeah.
some major thing about yourself? What kind of, I don't even know what kind of this are you? And then also finding, horoscopes and finding like, oh, am I like really a Pisces? Is that who I am? And like, so this seeking of like, who am I?
Yeah.
I'm giving you examples of like how it started early
Yeah.
and then continued. So that has been primary. And then also wanting to understand other people and
Mm-hmm.
really seeing like there's me and there's you, and then there's this space between us. And that's
Yeah.
like this,
Yeah.
this really cool concoction. Like, what is that?
Yes. Yeah, that's a gorgeous word because it's its own thing. That
Hmm.
that that interactive middle space. So, okay, so it was kind of there in some shape or form. And then you decide to become a coach. We meet there and then after practicing for a while, you say, no, it really is this next thing
Hmm.
to become a therapist. What was your kind of what propelled you to that next to say it's not just this, it's also that. And you went
Um,
back to school, Pam. Like I remember you saying like like you were in class with 20-year-olds,
totally.
yeah, like you went and no, it's a brave thing to do. So what was what propelled you?
I think it was kind of always there on the back burner.
Mhm.
Coaching seemed like feasible at the time, but also like I remember when I first heard about this thing called life coaching, I was actually in a graduate class, a career counseling class, and they talked about this thing called life coaching, however many years ago that was. And I was like, what is that? And reading about it and finding like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I could do that.
Yes.
And so, but I had also like been I was in a class exploring graduate programs. So it kind of was always there. So
Yeah.
I don't see them as at all contradictory or as even one is a step beyond the other. It's more and.
Mm-hmm. And what would you describe as kind of a separator or a distinction between coaching and therapy? I know I've got it how I kind of think of it and how I describe it to clients, but
Yeah.
how do you?
And
I'd be
I thought
interested.
about this in terms of like my coaching, because like in my
Right.
therapy practice, I utilize coaching all the time. There's
I
not like
bet.
a issue with that line. That's not line, but in my coaching to not kind of step into therapy is a different thing. So
Oh, interesting.
I see coaching as very much as you would see maybe baseball coaching. It's definitely a significant relationship, and it's also skill-based, motivation-based,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and kind of how to bring out the best in whatever endeavor somebody is pursuing, or in life in general.
Mm-hmm.
And therapy is more getting into the depths of really, I would say like early wounding,
Mm-hmm.
to to explore and heal. And what's coming to mind is kind of like the major turning point for me that you asked what propelled me. I was working for it's actually a yoga teacher training, life coach training, dual certification program. And I mean, it was amazing because we would do like a restorative yoga sequence, and while people were in their bodies, be prompting. And
Yeah,
it was
this wow,
really
somatic
deep
experience.
work,
Yeah.
somatic, deep
Yep.
work, and found that, people stored, and I mean, there were people that were remembering traumas that didn't
Yeah.
have, conscious memory of them until their
Yeah.
body kind of released it. And I felt like I want to know how to work with this in a way that,
Yeah. Yeah.
like this is a big thing. This could be like transformative in a way
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
so I just wanted to get in there and do that and know what to do with that when encountering it. So
I didn't realize. I don't think I've heard that actually. As much as close as we are and as often as we talk, I don't think I knew that that was kind of um, the moment, if there was such a thing, when you went, ooh, that, that. Um, would it also be fair to say, Pam, that um, you are kind of exploring that early wounding, but also helping someone understand themselves in that context and what they do? Is that fair?
absolutely,
Yeah,
because it's with us all the time. I mean, like I'm
all the
thinking
time.
when I say early wounding, I'm primarily talking about like attachment
Yep.
wounds, like
Yep.
um just the way we adapted to our environments is profound, and we continue to use those adaptations, sometimes in helpful ways and sometimes in not so helpful ways. And so bringing that to consciousness instead of just kind of having it run like background software is really yeah, it's a powerful self-awareness.
Powerful, powerful. I'm giggling inside right now. I'm thinking of a recent conversation when I was visiting, that you and I had, and I was talking about a guy, and I was like, I don't know if he really knows how to kind of do this relationship stuff and intimacy. And true to form, you're like, well, maybe you don't either.
And I wasn't even pinpointing you. It's more of like, do any of us really know?
No, I know, but it was so good.
Or
Like,
like,
there I was like,
yeah.
I don't know if he's knows, I've got his number. I don't know if he knows how to do this. And you're like, well, maybe you don't either, girly.
Yeah.
But it was said with such, I'm still giggling about it because it was spot on, as your observations are. But also it was done with what I think of as kind of playful candor, like direct, but also there was a lightness to it there, like we both kind of started laughing about it. Yeah, I loved how you described too, kind of the software that's running in the background that feels utterly, well, it's often because it's in the background. It's it's just the way we are, what we are. And I know, you and I've talked about this a bunch. I know when I'm kind of caught in the throes of that early wounding, it is literally like a team of horses pulling me in a direction. Like everything in my being, although not necessarily somatic, right? But kind of the truth of it. But everything is like pulling in one direction, and it's it's some work to kind of regroup. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think what's important to remember in that pull that you're talking about, like when we encounter those early wounds, adaptations, whatever you want to call it, as they're primarily pre-verbal. And so
I was just
consider a
just reading.
pre-verbal human.
Yeah.
There's no capability to exist on one's own. And so literally the thing that is activated is a survival fear. So which is what I say, it's like a team of horses. It's like my rational brain says that like this conversation is probably not going to kill me, but there's something inside me that I feel like if I don't resolve this right now, I'm going to die.
Yeah, no, it's team of horses. When I'm activated, it's, yeah, as you know.
It's true for all of us.
It's true for all of us, yeah. And that's when I'm like, okay, let me just reach out to Pam to get a check here. Okay, so therapy to you is that kind of the distinguisher is kind of the depth, the underneath, rather than kind of skills and strengths based and performance based and goal oriented. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that they actually like go hand in hand really well. I mean, because sometimes there is this, like this profound realization that we might have, or we might bring something to consciousness and really want to like take it out and look at it and all of that. And then it's like, well, in the real world, like how would that play out?
Totally. Yes.
And then some great coaching kind of tools and techniques that we both know so well can be really helpful.
Breathe.
Yeah.
Do nothing and breathe. Yeah.
Rule number one. Don't panic.
Number one, breathe. Do nothing and breathe. Okay, so rewinding. So for our story, which is going to kind of lead us into this, some of the space between us, actually, that we want to touch on. So we're in coach training. It's more than 10 years ago, Pam. So we're in coach training. Do you want to tell the story of how we met?
Well, then I have to like reveal like this ridiculous thing that we had to do.
Please do, please, because it was so annoying.
We had to be paired with a practice buddy. Like we had to be paired with somebody that we would practice. We were learning all these skills and tools and had to practice. And in order to pair, it was in the pairing, right? Like we had to say like, if you were a fruit or a vegetable, what would you be? And
And
the first,
everybody was taking it so, pardon me, effing seriously. Like there were people like they were really working hard on it. Like I remember one person saying like, I'm a strawberry because blah, blah.
I know, and they had all these reasons, which, you know, but for whatever reason, the first thing that popped into my head was avocado. And then I was like, well, how am I ever going to explain that? Like, I don't know. But then fortunately, we only a couple of people explained it, and we just had to like post it or something. And I saw that on the forum or whatever that you had posted avocado, and I was like, I saw your picture and I saw that, and I was like, I want her to be my partner. I don't know why, but I like the way she looks, and I like the fact that she even said avocado means like something. So I reached out, and I think I probably said something like, this is probably going to sound like really cheesy, but like the first thing that came to mind was avocado. So I feel like we should work together or something. I don't know.
It's almost exact. Yeah, no, and I had lost because I was so annoyed. I was so impatient. I'm like, let's just get to the training. Like, this is just monkeying around. Like, you know, whether it was or not, that was my stuff. I was like, let's just go. And I didn't even give an answer. I'm like, avocado because I like to eat it. Like I wasn't even participating. I was being a little rebellious. And yeah, no, and then you reached out and we became coaching buddies, practice buddies, which was pretty intense.
It was intense, but I feel like there was like a really good synchronicity right away. Like I feel like we were really able to, you know, to practice, even when it felt silly at first, you know.
Yes. Yeah, no, we did. And it's a way too, and I think we were lucky. We talked about this. Like we were just lucky from the jump to have the synchronicity and the kind of connection. But it was an opportunity because we were coaching, because we were practicing. Our subject matter was not limited. So I think it was an opportunity to really get to know one another in a very broad and full beginning way. Would you say, is that?
Yeah, totally.
So I'm thinking back to one of those. So we're coaching buddies, and then we're also developing this friendship. And I'm thinking back to, I know where I was standing, Pam. I'm thinking back to conversation we were having. I was having an issue with a guy. By the way, she almost always takes your side. Totally true. And I remember you said, trust the space. So I can't remember what the issue was at all with the guy, right? Which is really interesting. But that trust the space became kind of shorthand, and we use it to this day and it's, you know, between us, not just you to me, but media. So so part of this conversation is about exploring this concept of trust the space that we might be exploring in a podcast series. We'll see. But when you said, Sarah, trust the space, let's start there. Like, what did that mean in that moment, do you think?
I mean, to kind of pull back in what you were saying about the team of horses, I think that when the team of horses comes in, there's like such a sense of urgency that comes up. Because I remember along with that initial trust the space is like, there is no urgency, like trust the space was kind of, and so there's a difference between when something's important and something has that dire urgent feeling. And when there's a dire urgent feeling, there's like a step back to just like trust the space, like, which is also like sit with the discomfort of this, the discomfort of this. And it will be clearer on the other side of the discomfort. So I think that we've used it so much since then, but I'm thinking that that's where it originated, is in that kind of context.
Yep. And it's interesting too, because it's so much a part of our lexicon, our shorthand, that I don't think I realized the piece about the discomfort, but it makes it, yeah, that makes perfectly good
And
sense.
maybe I'm like plugging in, like, maybe that's not everything I meant in that moment.
Yeah.
Certainly means that to me now.
Right. Had you used that before, Pam?
Trust the space.
Yeah.
I think it came out of our conversation. I don't think I ever,
That's what I remember too.
so much of what you and I talk about is like when we talk, I form my thoughts.
Mhm, mhm.
So yeah, I'd probably not. I think
Yeah.
that just came out of our conversation and it felt like, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know where I was standing. Because it just felt like truth.
Mhm.
All right. For me, the somatic experience of truth, which is just kind of this calm, like ding,
Mhm.
it's not any kind of high level, high anxiety feeling. It's just this kind of calm ding.
Yeah, knowing. Yeah.
Calm knowing. Yeah. And so I want to go, my brain is pulling in multiple different directions. So you said it in that moment, and then it has over a decade stuck with us.
Totally expanded the meaning, right? It's
Which
like,
I want to, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
in that moment, it was really focusing on relational urgency, I would say.
Totally. Yes.
When we feel that team of horses, right? And for some of us, that's, I need to fix this right now.
Mhm.
For some of us, that's, I need to get as far away from this as I possibly can.
For me, it's
whatever
both.
the team of horses is doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's several variations of that, but like that relational urgency. And
Yeah.
since then, like, yeah, it's been expanded, I would say.
And so so let's start with you. So if it began as this concept of kind of sitting with the urgency and letting it kind of roll over, and not react, et cetera, how would you say it has evolved, and what does it mean to you? What are all of the things that it means
Be
to you
fun to
now?
explore, actually.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And the other thing that comes to mind is the discomfort of like the unknown. So like the space, like I often picture, like trapeze artists when they like fly from one trapeze to the next. There's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
space, they have to let go of one
Yes.
fully
Yes.
before they grab the next. They can't like hold, if they try to hold on to one and reach for the next and grab it, like they're not gonna, their arms are gonna split apart and they're gonna not do their thing. So I think that transitions are like that, whether it's not knowing what you're gonna do for your next career move, or not knowing, even like not knowing if I set this boundary or I say this thing or I do this thing, like what's going to happen next. Like there's a space of where you're suspended between trapezes.
Yeah.
And that kind of space, like trust the space of the uncertainty of the not knowing, and trust that the next thing will come. And you don't need to have it all figured out first.
I've also heard, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I've also heard you say that this space, so I'm hearing a lot of stuff here. So one is, of course, so one is trust the space to be with our own discomfort and not have the answer. Trust the unknown. Trust also that there is something on the other side of the unknown. Did I hear that? It will come, right? So there's a lot right there. And then I've also heard you say that the space always reveals.
Mm-hmm.
Would you?
It does.
Yeah. Would you speak to that?
Um, I think that we can distract ourselves from seeing what's there. You know, like it's like taking the pause to allow whatever is in you to arise, and also whatever externally is happening to show itself. So I don't even like maybe put words to it. It feels similar to when, you know, if you have like, say you have a whole Sunday ahead of you with nothing on your calendar and nothing to do, that can freak some people out, because that's like this space that you don't know what to do with yourself, and you have to kind of be with yourself. And it might be tempting to fill the entire day with all these activities, which is great. Check them off your bucket list, whatever. But it's also not necessarily giving yourself the space. And what also comes to mind, anybody who's practiced yoga, at the end of every yoga class, there is a shavasana. So there is a period of absolute rest, which is meant to integrate everything in the practice, you know, so there's this integration, digestion really of life that happens in the space.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So it's two, as you said, so it's two things. It's what's revealed inside, and it's also what may be revealed externally in the context, let's say, of a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the space
And when I say relationship, a lot of times when people hear the word relationship, they think like romantic partners. And to me, we're in relationship with every single thing in our lives, animate and non-animate. Like how we relate to everything is kind of like our style of who we are. It's our expression. It's our art, so to speak. And so relating, I just want to just say that, like, so often relationship is thought of as that partnership, which it is a relationship, but like a relationship to ourselves.
Yes.
It's primary, and then how that relationship relates to everything else in our lives. So just kind of loosening the kind of definition.
For sure. And lots of different types of relationships. But also how I'm hearing you say how we and again, primary is us, but oneself, but then also how we relate to the world.
Yeah.
How we show up, who we are, how we roll. So in the context of relationships, you've been married, what, 33 years? You just celebrated 33, right? Yeah. You're a mother. And do we get to show everyone my pal? What's he doing down there?
He is sound asleep on my. I don't think I can.
No, it's all right. Hi,
here, but
my pal.
At some point, if he wakes up, I don't want to wake him because
no. Because hi, hello. Can I be on camera? The cutest dog in the world. So you're a people mother, and you're an animal lover, and a wife, and a daughter, and a sibling. Would you kind of share with us how you kind of the circumstances in any of these relationships where you are often kind of trusting the space and what that might look like? Like when do you, maybe another way to put it is, when do you most kind of, maybe what are the circumstances in which you most often rely on it or lean into it? Maybe that's the question I'm trying to ask.
Which has probably changed over time. Like right now, currently, I would say, well, I think it's always been that urgency, like that we were first talking about, but like take a step back from the urgency, trust the space to reveal what's true for me and also what is happening on the other side. But also like, more and more taking up space as who I am, which requires sharing preferences and boundaries and all of that. Trusting the space becomes then kind of that trapeze, like, well, okay, well, I'm going to express this, and then I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have control over how, whatever, and I am trusting the space, kind of holding on to myself in that unknown, if that makes sense.
I want to, yes, it does. And so how would you describe, what does it mean to hold on to yourself? Because I think, well, I'll speak for myself, but I think many of us can identify with being in that liminal space on the trapeze of, and the discomfort of letting go, having to let go, forcing ourselves to let go, could be a continuum, without the next thing, whatever that might be. And in the example you just gave, that can just be a response from someone else that we're uncomfortable with waiting for. So what does it mean for you, Pam, to kind of hold on to yourself in that space and discomfort?
So I think the best way to articulate, I for years have taught this class called Brave Love, and week 1 is, I've renamed it a couple of times, but the way I've described it is kind of like, if you consider yourself like you have an axis point, and you kind of like, revolve your thoughts and attention around this axis, which can be as basic as like, I'm feeling a little off. Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? What do I need right now? Kind of like just focus, like kind of in that space. And, in certain relationships, almost always in romantic relationships, but also with like certain personalities at work or friendships or whatever, somebody comes into your orbit and all of a sudden you've left your own axis and you're revolving around theirs, completely like revolving, like
so awesome.
What their mood is, what they need right now.
Yeah.
I wonder if I did something to upset them. I wonder this, and you're completely like revolving around their axis. So to me, holding my own is coming, like realizing, oh, there I am, and coming back to that, which is
I'm no longer on my axis, in my own rotation. I've gone somewhere else.
Yep.
I've left myself.
Like you left yourself.
I've left myself. Yes.
Just kind of flailing, yeah. Right? And
yeah.
so
yeah.
The latest iteration of that class, I've called that first chapter Homecoming. And the feeling of, like really being homesick for yourself. So, and how it can feel like foreign if you haven't spent a lot of time.
I was just going to say, Pam Clark, I was just going to say, and we are not, I can't speak to other cultures, but in our culture, at least the one that I experienced, it's wholly foreign, because we are told all the time to look externally to achievement, a relationship, anything else for the affirmation, access, identity. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not that those things don't matter. It's just that I love your description. We leave our own axi. What's the plural of axis?
Yeah.
We leave our own, right? And then we're like over there. And I know for me, it's pretty subtle. Like I have to be on it. Do you experience
because
it that
it's
way?
like, well, yeah, because it's like the water I've swam in. So it feels like way more foreign to not do that. For sure. So holding my own, back to that, is, or staying with myself is, kind of recognizing when I have gone there, or I'm pulled to go there, and coming back. Yeah.
So two things. What are the things in your own life that allow you to stay connected to your own axis, but also to notice when you are no longer? Because that's the other, as you were just saying. I mean, that's a big piece of it. It's like, oh wow, I'm over there.
For me, it's like pretty somatic. Like I
Mhm.
feel like almost like levitate, like ungrounded, flighty, like very not connected to my physical body, let alone kind of like my, you know, my own mind, heart, soul, body, just really kind of vacated.
Mhm.
Um, and coming back is, I mean, for me, my yoga practice has been just the way to come back, which is finding my own, all right, can I feel my feet on the ground? Can I feel where my body is touching this
We're just
chair? Can
thinking
I feel my breath in my body? Can I, engage my senses and just
it.
back on that level? And then yoga is also very spiritual to me. So then there's also this remembering kind of um I am not my thoughts. I am not
Mhm. Mhm.
kind of tumultuous stuff going on the surface, and kind of being able to step in more deeply.
Would you speak to, I'm just thinking because we have more than a decade of shared understanding, history, friendship, deep friendship, exploration on all of this stuff. I'm just thinking we in our conversation right here have said the word somatic at least 4 or 5 times. Would you, and kind of for both of us, kind of the importance of like that check-in, that feeling, how would you describe somaticism, if that's a word, but it kind of an orientation to the body as part of staying connected to one's axis?
Well, the body is like a really baseline communicator to us. Our bodies are animals. And if you talk about the animals on my lap or an animal out in the wild, they, it's body awareness that allows them to respond to anything that's happening. And so like an emotion has, and like we feel it first in our bodies. And emotions all have a purpose. Like we wouldn't feel them if they didn't have a purpose. And so being aware of whether we're hot or cold or hungry or thirsty is one thing. And then also being aware of like um angry, sad. um Angry is kind of the raw material of boundaries, like something kind of has been violated here. It also could be a protector from feeling hurt. But all of those things are revealed to us in our bodies.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think checking in at any given time with, not that it's not important, like what's on my mind, also what's happening in my body is really necessary to have like the full scope of information that's available to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And for someone who would say, well, I don't know what I'm feeling,
Yeah.
or like I mean, I can't tell you, like, I often hear that, and as someone who thinks of herself as having big feelings, it can take me a bit to be like, wait, what am I feeling here? What is actually? So what would you say to people to kind of know at that, how to begin that process of checking in?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a practice, an
Mm-hmm.
intentional practice of
Mm-hmm.
kind of building awareness. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it can start with just, like what's your preferred temperature? what kind of fabric do you like? What feels good on your skin? Like can you feel the shower water kind of like beating on your back or arms? Just starting to like bring physical awareness into, and a lot of people have some kind of a physical practice. And so somebody might know, you're a runner and you might know, how's this feel today? There are things you may overlook because you want to keep running, but your body is telling you things all the time as you're being active, and it's telling you things all the time as we're just sitting here too. But another way would be to bring, that kind of awareness that you might think, like if you're a lifter, or if you're like, oh, I tweaked my back on that golf swing or whatever, like just kind of, it's like bringing that awareness all the time.
That
And
kind of
that's not a natural practice for me. Like I had to learn that.
yeah.
And yoga is what helped me do that. Like
Yes.
yoga in the true sense of the word, or is, and it very much relates to trusting the space, because like sitting there and watching what arises in the stillness of a, what am I telling myself? What am I experiencing? All of that is really powerful. And uncomfortable often. So it's no wonder that we want to like not do it.
Totally.
But it's kind of like, having like a really important piece of feedback sitting in your email box and not opening it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great metaphor. Yeah. No, I know. For me, it's absolutely a practice. Like, wait, what's going on here? I know too. One of the questions we will often ask one another, and I find this to be this will help me get to my emotion quickly. Like if there's a lot kind of swirling around, is what's your intention? Like for me, that just cuts to it. I'm like, oh, wait, I was feeling this or thought I was feeling this, but this is what's actually motivating me right now. Like that cuts, it's like almost like a scalpel in a good way. Precise. Like, oh, there it is.
Well, for me, it was really important to learn like what anger feels like in my body. Like I know that I feel it kind of like solar plexus area, and it's this gripping. And like that is a newer adult relationship that I've started to cultivate, is my relationship with anger. And I remember when I first started learning, like that's where I feel it. Sometimes, since it's not a comfortable space for me to be in, my body is what tells me, like, oh, you're angry. Before
Yes.
my mind even wants to go there, it's like I feel it clenching.
Yes.
And I have since developed a much like kind of a reverence for what anger is able to show us and
Would you
reveal.
speak to that, Pam? Because anger is so often thought of as a negative, as a negative emotion. And so speak to kind of the reverence of what anger, just in your own experience, has shown you. It's beautiful.
Well, I think that the negative is that we have associated anger with aggression and violence in our culture. And I just want to say that I'm not having a reverence for aggression and violence. But the actual like core emotion of anger is like a biological response to being hurt. Like if you burn yourself while you're cooking, the first flash, is like, damn, like it's anger, right? It's like, but that's also true like with emotional pain. And so when we're hurting, the first thing we need is protection. And then somehow we need restoration. So anger, in that way, I think I said like the raw material boundaries, meaning that it is like, it's showing that there is something feels threatened, something needs protection. And to kind of swallow that or stifle that
Mm-hmm.
is to not self-protect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the thing, like, to aggress that is also not to truly self-protect, because it's not actually getting to the root of what's feeling threatened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I was going to say, and then the next piece is, how am I going to express this in a way that is the distinction between assertion and aggression? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, it's validating it internally before it's even expressed. So for people that are afraid of how they might express anger, like, to start, you don't have to express anything.
Just know that it's even
More like,
happening. Yeah.
know that it's there.
Yeah, totally.
Be curious about it. Start to
Yeah.
open up a conversation with it to see what it's showing you. And then you can
Yes.
decide if you want to express anything or not. But it's more
Yes.
like that first
Yeah.
and foremost.
Like, ooh, there is this, and we're just using anger as one of the, I'm just mindful of our time. We could just,
We could just,
we could just,
it's known to happen.
we know this, PNC, we know this.
So I think like
the
other thing that comes with, like, back to trust the space.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my
concept of too soon to tell.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm like shaking my head, because the number of times I'm like, here's the answer, and you're like, too soon to tell. I'm like, damn.
Yeah, I mean, like, we really want to have it all figured out. Like, it
At
feels
least
safe
I do.
to the
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah,
like
totally.
to have it figured out. And so often, like, what else is coming to me? Another thing that we've talked about is this concept of, it's all a process, it's all in motion. So remember, I shared with you, I was listening to this podcast, and I think it was like a geologist or an environmentalist or something that was talking about how in some other language, there is no, like, very few words, very few nouns are like stable stasis, that there's so it would be like, there isn't such thing as a river, it's a rivering.
Which we now use all the time too.
Yeah. And so, like, the too soon to tell, like, really feels like it kind of like, oh, and now I'm a therapist. It's like, well, no, like, I am therapist actually right now, and the river is still going.
Yes.
And so this idea of that there is this final place, this ending point, this fixed answer, feels safer, but it's a myth. And so, like, we're kind of fooling ourselves in that safety by not realizing that, like, even by saying, like, well, this is a bad thing and this is a good thing. It's like, well, yes, and too soon to tell, like, how it's all
to tell. Yeah, no, the number of times you said that to me. I just, no, there's a lot. There's a lot here. And the rivering thing, that's new, I'd say, for us in the last year, actually. Just kind of allowing oneself to go with the current, not against one's will, certainly. Like, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, but kind of like relaxing into the current and the unknown of where it may be going. Yeah, I know. Okay, I have like 10 more questions. I just heard Neville snoring.
Yes.
Hi. Are there times, Pam, have there been times for you when you've observed that trusting the space would have been too passive, that there have been moments where you have needed to kind of step into the space rather than not lean out from it, but rather than stand in it, but really needed to kind of be more active?
I hear what you might be asking is there time that I've used that concept as an excuse to tolerate something that I shouldn't have?
That wasn't what I was asking, but it's interesting.
Because I see, like, trust the space now more as, like, as trusting what will happen when I do insert myself and step in there. Like, trusting space is actually like trusting I am truthful to myself and protecting myself and expressing myself authentically, trusting the space of that. Like, and so I think the reason I said that first part is like, could I tell myself instead of doing that, like trust the space? I mean, I could, but that would be like using it as an excuse to not be honest.
And honest is something that you and I have been talking about a lot, I'd say in the last 6 weeks or so, kind of honesty and authenticity, emotional honesty, emotional authenticity, which I find really rigorous. And the only road, damn it. How would you describe, because authenticity is like, it's thrown around so much, but how would you describe kind of emotional honesty, emotional authenticity in the concept, in the construct of relationship with oneself and then with others?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I think if you don't have it with, if you're not being honest with yourself, there's no way to be
There is
honest.
no, you can't get to the other. No,
So it
no, no, there
starts
is
there.
none. Yeah, right. You're in another
Um,
axis before you've even, right. Yeah.
So it does require some, like, honest, just like really looking at what's there for you. Like you said, one way in for you is what's my intention. It's looking at like, what am I feeling, and why? Like, even once you recognize, we used anger, once you recognize you're angry, like, well, what really feels threatened here? It might seem like what feels threatened is my time, because you left your coat on the floor again and I have to pick it up. But actually, like, what's really threatened is, oh, I kind of feel like I'm not being considered.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I kind of feel like, like, so when you get to the root of that and you're really honest about it, emotional honesty then is the vulnerability to say, like, that just feels like, or I tell myself, you're not considering me. I would really like do this. It's so much more vulnerable than like, I've told you 100 times, put your coat away.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's much more, yeah, no, it's so much more vulnerable to be emotionally honest. And I'm also thinking this ties us all the way back to kind of trusting the space, because in that space of emotional vulnerability and honesty and authenticity, we have to be, I'll speak for myself, I have to be able to sit with the discomfort of, I don't know how that's going to roll with somebody else. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You don't know how, you can't control the outcome. You can't control kind of if they think you're being ridiculous.
Right.
You can't
Right.
control,
Image management, outcome. Right.
none of that. Like, and so there's that space there.
Yes. Yes.
That is really uncomfortable. So I think there's getting clear internally, and then sometimes it means expressing, sometimes it doesn't. Like, sometimes once we're clear internally, like, we kind of have a different, we're in a different place, a different kind of move forward or way to move forward. But and then I always like run through the kind of age old, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Does it have to be right now? Does it have to come from me or two that people in my life have added on? And like, in terms of speaking emotion, being honest with yourself and then expressing it. Like, we don't have to express every single thing we feel.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Shouldn't actually.
No, I'm thinking of, Terry, right? And unbridled self-expression. Yeah, like that's a whole nother issue. Yeah. Yeah.
So then there's, just really knowing, or trial and error, not knowing ahead of time.
Yes.
A lot of this is trial and error.
Yes. Yep.
In that space, like, one of the things that I often ask myself, like, once I can kind of get back there, is, like, what is life asking of me right now?
That's a beautiful question.
And it might be asking me to step back. It might be asking me to step in. It might be asking me to express or to whatever. And sometimes people are trying to decide something. Should I stay or should I go? Should I look for another job? Should I this? And it's like, well, if you're honest about what life is asking of you, whether you show up in a different way with whoever you are or leave, it's asking something big of you that might not be all that different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To the circumstance.
If you're going to move
Yes.
forward honestly, not as like a
Yes.
no, I'm not talking about ghosting
No. Yeah. No.
a job or a person, but like in order to move through the leaving or the staying, it might be like kind of what life's asking of you in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It might be irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. So much, I'm just thinking so much of what you've shared and is iterative, Pam. I'm just thinking back to something iterative and always in process, I guess. And I'm thinking back to something we were just talking about, I think this weekend or last week, that, I mean, I'm paraphrasing you. Basically, you're a little suspicious of someone who says that they're like done growing. I mean, I'm right? Like, yeah, and I am, I'm like, really? And I think I said to you,
Yeah, and I would actually like change the word suspicious maybe to like
yeah, that's my word.
it's more like you see where somewhere they've closed a door for some. I'm thinking more like, in post patient kind of relationships, like, oh, like they're holding that one closed really tightly for some reason. It's just kind of like we'll go there when they're ready. So yeah,
I'm
I
also
guess
on the flip side of it too. I'm also suspicious isn't the wrong word, but isn't the right word. But I'm also, maybe for me it like questioning might be when someone is a coach or a therapist and they feel and they're not developing themselves, like they're not bumping up against their stuff, they're not working it because they think they've got it all, and they're only in it's they're in the safety of coaching or therapizing. Yeah, that always kind of raises
and
an
I mean,
eyebrow
I
for
think
me.
that could be potentially true for any kind of endeavor, right?
For
Like,
sure, absolutely, any
do you
endeavor.
want
Yeah.
to, like, if you're a lawyer and not practicing
Yes.
legal, I don't know. Like, I mean, like, I just think that, yeah, would you
Totally.
go to a dresser that like never cut their hair before? Or would you,
Right.
like, I don't know. Like, I'm just thinking of
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
things, Uh, so yeah, I think that that's true. I think that continually doing your own work is necessary.
Yeah, I love
Is
that
that what
word.
you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, no, I know for me, and I would agree with you. I think that, like, I think of the best leaders as constantly being on their learning edge, constantly, like very accomplished people, right? And they're on that.
Well, I think that's actually where we thrive, like is on that edge. And
Damn
so
it.
somebody's like not on that edge, they're kind of, and not that we don't ever need to step back and be
Right.
kind of like
Yeah.
stagnant for, not stagnant even, but really just kind of like
Resting or yeah.
resting.
Yeah.
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 But I mean, that edge is, I mean, that's why people love video games. It's like there's like this, true gamers are like, yeah, it's just enough challenge to keep you at the next level. If you started at level 1 and they gave you level 23 immediately, you'd quit, right? And if they stayed at level 1
Yes.
forever, you'd get bored. But it's just that
Yes.
just enough challenge. And I think that we
Yes.
need that in our lives in a variety of areas.
Yeah. No, for sure. I love when you say necessary. That's all right. So I could continue talking to you, but I'm gonna ask you the last question, which is the question I ask of all interviewees for the Making Magnificence project, which is what does magnificence mean to you in your own life?
Magnificence. I mean, what What comes to mind for me is really just like moments.
Mhm.
Moments when it just feels like it's like a combination of awe and delight and just pinch me now kind of moments, that this is just magnificent, like in this moment, how this is coming together. And it's often in the ordinary.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's kind of a harvesting of what has been sown and painstakingly often kind of tended to come to fruition. I'm thinking of this in family and work and all the way around, but I think it's those moments, ordinary moments, when all of that kind of somehow comes together to reveal a wow.
Mhm. Mhm. That's beautiful. I love the harvesting after painstakingly sowing sometimes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, my guest today for the Making Magnificence project has been Pamela Nauda Clark, coach and primarily therapist, and very, very, very dear friend to me. Pam Clark, PNC, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's awesome.
It's delicious.